We all know of Biden's student loan debt cancellation plan, $10,000, $20,000 if you are a Pell Grant recipient, if you make under $125,000 a year. This cancellation plan, I would argue, is not enough. It's very fair, but nevertheless, it is infuriating to members of the right in this country. And a federal judge in Texas has decided to block it from moving forward. So US District Judge Mark Pittman, a Trump appointee, ruled on Thursday that Biden's debt relief program is an unconstitutional exercise of Congress's legislative power and must be vacated. The Education Department had already been prohibited from moving ahead with Biden's student loan debt relief program under a temporary order from a federal appeals court in a separate case. But the latest decision goes much further in permanently prohibiting the Education Department from carrying out the entire program. So the administration filed this appeal late Thursday night, so last night, and then White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said in a statement, the president and the administration are determined to help working and middle class Americans get back on their feet, while our opponents, backed by extreme Republican special interests, sued to block millions of Americans from getting much needed relief. So let's talk briefly about the legality of student loan debt cancellation. Congress has granted the secretary a more specific and unrestricted authority to create and to cancel or modify debt owed under federal student loan programs in the Higher Education Act itself. So the part of the Higher Education Act of 1965 that they're talking about grants the Secretary of Education a few powers, including the power to enforce, pay, compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however inquired, including any equity or right of redemption. So before we talk a little bit about how we got ourselves in this situation where people are crippled by the amount of debt that they have, let's just unpack how Trump appointed judges are moving forward with taking legal action against the president of the United States, who's pursuing a policy that is very popular. So Rayyvana, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, first of all, I had $20,000 of my student loans forgiven, which has been a huge weight off my back. So that's number one. I've immediately felt the impacts of it. I know lots of people similarly situated to me are benefiting from this. Second of all, I want to say that one of the people who brought this lawsuit had tons of PPP loans forgiven. None of the people who brought these lawsuits have standing to bring this lawsuit, and the judge who made this ruling doesn't have jurisdiction to create a nationwide injunction on this program. So the whole thing, on the legal side is very Trumpian, so to speak, which you would expect from a Trump appointed judge, but it's massive overreach on an issue that has been, decided by the best legal minds in the country, that it is 100% within the power of the president to do this action. But like you said, I agree, it doesn't go far enough. All student loans need to be forgiven. I'll just say really quickly, as someone who's in their last year of law school, I think a lot of the arguments against student loan forgiveness is, they're overwhelmingly gonna go benefit the people who are doctors or lawyers who are going to be making tons and tons of money, which, I mean, first of all, the program is means tested. So, the people who are benefiting from this are not making tons and tons of money. But that aside, they are typically use the averages of income from these groups, because, if I, who makes $15 an hour representing disabled people in housing court, is in a room with someone who works for one of the major law firms in New York City, where they start out at $400,000, the average income between the two of us is going to be exceptionally high. But if you actually get down into the weeds and do the median income, there's a huge, it's massively disparate from the numbers that they're telling you. And alleviating this sort of debt allows people to go into careers that they're interested in, or allows lawyers to pursue public interest careers, which is a very important public service that people are, pushed away from because the pay is not very high, and the debt that you accumulate while going to law school is. So this program really helps level the playing field. Of course, it should go further and forgive all student loan debt. And we need to have public options for schools in every single state that are free. But seeing this massive overstep of the judiciary branch is really heinous, in my opinion.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Also, as a Pell Grant recipient, this is a great program. And you have all of these people on the right saying stuff like, we can't forgive rich people's student loans. These are all rich people. But the criteria is that they have to be earning under $125,000 a year. I'm glad you brought up PPP loans because the government forgave $748 billion in PPP loans. More than 70% of those loans went to people in the top 20%. And why is the right not pursuing lawsuits saying that this was ridiculous and they didn't have the power to do it? Because they only care about rich people. They hate this policy because it helps working class people at the expense of rich bankers. So let's get into some of those details. College was free for state public schools until about the mid-70s. A particular advisor in the Reagan administration did not like this. Here's what he had to say. His name was Roger Friedman. He said, "We are in danger of producing an educated proletariat that is dynamite. We have to be selective on who we allow to go through higher education." This is insane. Just the fact that he said these words and they are written down is the quiet part being said out loud very clearly. So college attendance in the United States didn't really skyrocket until the financial crisis. So I put together the recipe for the student loan debt crisis in the United States. So wages were decreasing during the recession, so people had less money to spend. States had their budgets cut, which means public college was not subsidized as much. More people started going to college because they were sheltering from entering a bad job market. So they decided to go to college instead. They didn't want to enter the bad economy. Then we saw the rise of for-profit colleges and huge tuition hikes. This led to a 100% increase of student loan debt in the United States. Let's look at this chart here. So this shows the change of public college tuition for a four-year university on average in the United States, and it includes an inflation-adjusted metric. That's the darker line on the top. So insane. You can see the difference between 1970 and 2019, 2020. The way that people make money off of this is, there are bankers and people who are very wealthy who are invested in these for-profit colleges, but we also have private student loan debt servicers getting very rich off of student loan debt. They make money off of servicing and consolidation fees, which can be 0.9% of the total loan. They can get $30 for every single consolidation of loans. We know that people have loans coming from many different places, and they can make up to $400 to $1,000 per borrower. That is a lot of money when you consider that we have $1.8 trillion of student loan debt in the United States. And we don't know how much of that amount is fees and is accrued interest, which is disgusting. We should know what that figure is. So I want to talk about one specific lobbyer, but all of these student loan debt servicers are lobbying Congress to not cancel student loan debt, even though this was a predatory practice made to make rich people richer. So Navient, who is a student loan debt servicer that was acquired by Maximus, they decided to stop servicing student loans when repayments were paused during the pandemic. They were like, well, I can't make any money off of this right now, so I'm out. They gave over $10 million to members of Congress and $4.2 million since 2016. They are literally paying people to not cancel student loan debt because people know this is the right thing to do. Higher education is a good investment. Having an educated workforce is actually good for the economy. It's not going to tank the economy to cancel student loans. There are tons of economic analysis that shows people not being cost burdened by having to pay this amount out to pay off their student loans every month. They will start spending money into the economy on other things, like buying houses, like spending their money on discretionary goods that they can't afford right now. This kind of thing could stimulate the economy. So it's just a little bit disgusting that this is the history there. And it's so blatantly obvious to so many of us that they are just doing this to make more money and protect their wealth. And they will go so far as to try and block people from getting $10,000 to $20,000 forgiven. Rayyvana?
Yeah, I want to remind people that Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education during the Trump administration, her family, one of the largest owners of student debt. So she had a vested interest in delaying student debt forgiveness programs, even passed under the limited types that were passed during the Trump administration. So this corruption goes all the way up, and One last appeal to the idea that the people who are getting this forgiveness are not the rich, the elite, the people who are the highest income earners in the country. Those people don't have to take out student loans. People coming from wealthy families are able to go to college without having to take massive student loans because their families are paying for their education. But people who are working class, like me, like my friends, we had to work full time to put ourselves through college. And I'll say we deserve relief. We deserve relief way more than the wealthy corporations and the wealthy business owners did for their PPP loans that they mostly did not go into protecting the paychecks of their employees. So, this is something worth fighting for. And, I'm going to keep standing in support of student debt forgiveness. I would, even if I didn't benefit from it. And I hope that everyone watching will as well.
Yep. This was a corrupt money-making scheme for bankers and people who have a ton of money. And to get justice and correct that, you've got to cancel a student loan debt. Very simple.